from the depths instant tutorial.
You're watching Gmodism, and today we're going to get into 3D CRAM Tetris. Yes, the day has arrived, 3D CRAM Tetris in an instant tutorial. So here we are, and 3D CRAM Tetris is basically the way you need to build CRAM cannons in order to be much more efficient than the standard 2D CRAM Tetris is. And basically, 2D CRAM Tetris works like this. You make a pattern like this. And when you have done a pattern, there is only one pattern to make, basically. So you just take that, make a copy, and then paste it like this in a stack. And this is what we call 2D CRAM Tetris. And when we connect up a firing piece like this, we have a CRAM cannon turret. What is 3D CRAM Tetris? Well, instead of just stacking them like this, we're going to make more connection to pellets, because pellets is the thing that's, expensive in this game. So for example, we add more packers here, so we got an extra connection, and that's how we do it. And in some spaces where we don't have many connections, we can, for example, put some payload compactors. This is, however, extremely fast and simply explained, and 3D CRAM Tetris is mostly useful the larger the cannons are. And why do we do this? Well, if we go into here, we go to stats, material per firepower. And the lower this number is, the better. If you do a regular stack, the material per firepower will be pretty bad. That said, you can still do 3D CRAM Tetris for 3x3 CRAM cannon turrets as well, and I have invented a pattern to do this, and other people have invented the same pattern independently because it's a very good pattern. So for example here you can see that on this cannon we have a 7-second reload time, and this one has a 5-second reload time. Both have the minimal capacity, 250, right? So the 3D version is actually much more efficient. It's not only more efficient, it's also even more space efficient. So if we look here, why is it like this? Well, it is because it has more connections to the pellets. This one has 62 pellet connections, and this one has 90 pellet connections. So if we check this, we can see that the material per firepower is 800, which is pretty normal for 2D Tetris like that. And here we also have this one, it has a material per firepower of 550. And when we make larger turret, the 2D CRAM Tetris will be a little bit more efficient, since we get connections here and there and there, like that, so we can have pellets here. So we will get some more connections, so it's not going to be quite this bad. A lot of the time the 2D CRAM Tetris is slightly more volume efficient, but it comes with a very high cost. So 3D Tetris is of course the way to go, but just to show you this little example here. So the 3x3 CRAM Tetris is very specific. You can see we have kind of a 1, 2, 3 rod going vertical down here, and then we come to another like this, a horizontal 1, 2, 3 rod here. And that's kind of how it works. Pause the video and check this pattern out if you want to make efficient 3x3 CRAM Tetris. We're gonna talk about larger 3D Tetris, which is even more efficient. Here you can see two very similar 3D CRAM Tetris, or they're not very similar, they're completely different, but they are very similar in stats. So even though this has a lot of CRAM connectors, it's made in a weird way like this, the CRAM connectors, they are very cheap, they only cost 5 materials. So if we check into this one, we have in stats, we have a material per firepower of 307, and if we go to this thing, it has a material by firepower by 305.9. So these stats are extremely similar. They are built in a different way slightly, but they are very, very, very similar when it comes to their stats. So if you make a good 3D CRAM Tetris, which will be different for every turret, well, you will get pretty similar values. And compare this around 300 to this like around 500, and to this like 800. And the lower the number is the better. So this is some really efficient stuff. And they are different on the second layer here. We have connectors and stuff going like that. And this is kind of more standard, so we'll try to make something like this. But underneath, they are also slightly different. Let me show you. There we go. So you can see they are very similar, but they are slightly offset. So the one to the right has a connector in the middle, and the one to the left doesn't have a connector in the middle. It has a pellet or a compactor connected up in the middle instead. Connectors are green, packers are blue, and pellets are not colored. So that's how we kind of understand this. And we have some purple ones in the edge just to show it like that. So we want to try and make sure that each pellet has as many connections as possible. And this is the goal when we make some 3D Tetris. So let's make our 3D Tetris. So you want to have any template. We're gonna do a 7x7. This is the space which will be movable inside a turret well. Perfect. So we're going to design a turret within the space above the alloy here. Then we're gonna design a diamond shape. So we have a 6-way connector, we have packers connected up on all sides, and we add a couple of pellets. And there we have it, a nice diamond shape. We're gonna make a prefab of this, and then we're gonna decide, do we want to have the connection pillar in the middle, or do we want to have it not in the middle? For the 7x7, it's a little bit hard to put it in the middle, so I'm not going to do that, and I'm going to place it like this. And of course, the pellets can overlap. The pellets that stick out over, you'll just remove them, and then you have a nice little shape here. The reason we even do 3D CRAM Tetris is of course that the pellets are the only part that is decently expensive within the CRAM system. So we will do the 3D Tetris to connect up more pellets than we would have otherwise. And the pellets, of course, it's a cube, it has 6 sides, and it can thus have 6 connections. We will be trying to make it have 6 connections. When building turrets, I would advise you to color your blocks, and it will be a little bit easier for you. We will prioritize to have more connections to the blocks like this one. That is surrounded on all 4 sides. These on the edges we will replace later with compactors in most cases. The parts that are sticking out here, here and here are the ones that connect up to the pellets. So place them in order that you'll connect up all the pellets that are embedded with 4 around. Now we have added these payload packers to all of the pellets, so it has an up and down connection. So we can basically stack this in between these layers. So this has to be up and down. And thus we can take this 2-layer slab and stack it and get more connections. Very nice. Now we need to connect up these payload packers because they don't have a connection yet. So in order to do that, we'll need to make, some connections like this and like this. And we need to connect them to the green connection towers because these will be going vertically through the entire turret. And now we will connect up like this, but then of course we will have a weird pellet in the middle. And this one makes it a little bit tricky. So we need to connect it up in some way, and what we can do is to connect it from one of the sides like this. So this is why I wanted to show you what happens if we have a middle pellet. It's a little bit harder. So we have one that goes up and down, and that means that this one isn't needed, and this connection isn't probably needed either. Because of this, we actually need to fiddle around a little bit where we place down the blocks. So to solve this issue on both ends, you can see this one and this block and this block. These are the only packers that are not connected to anything. So we're going to turn them inwards like this. And we can have a little CRAM connector there to connect them up. We're gonna do the same here, use this tower, connect them up, turn these inwards. All right. In the empty spaces within the turret, we will need to fill up with some other blocks. And inside of here, we're going to have some payload compactors or possibly pellets. And now we can do some magic. You can see this. We have a connection going outwards. This will definitely not be connected to anything. We can remove that, and turn it inwards. So now it has a connection down, up, and also inwards like this. So we can turn around a little bit, fiddle around, and make sure that connections that are connected to nothing can end up going inwards and having a potential connection within this place. Because even though the payload compactors aren't super expensive, well, they cost 25, they still cost something. And if we can use less of them, we can be more efficient. And here we have another spot where we can turn the payload packer. And we can of course turn it like this. Then we'll have a connection upwards. So we'll have 3 connections going on here. Alright, so now we can go with payload compactors. And here we can see we have 1, 2, 3 connections, and it's gonna stack, so it's gonna stay at 3, it's not gonna be more. If it's 4 connections or more, we might as well put in some pellets there. So here we have 1, 2, 3, can put one here too, 1, 2, 3, one there too. And inside of here we only have 1 connection, but sometimes it might actually be needed. But we're gonna skip that for now, because we need some other components inside of here too. We also want to have some inherent gauge increasers. So having gauge increasers, we can put them here. See, inside of here you can see there is no connection to any kind of pellet. If we put something here, nothing will connect to a pellet. But if we put a gauge increaser here, it connects to the CRAM connector, and having this integrated into the cannon can make it so that we will not need to put down any more gauge increasers in the top of the turret. Everything is integrated. And they aren't very expensive either, so it's a good thing to integrate here. If you have some really useless spaces you can put nothing in, you could put in some surge protectors or some just wood blocks or something for structural integrity. In any case, here you can see we have a connection going down here, and this should now be quite stackable. However, this one has 1, 2, 3, and it will have 4 when we are stacking it. This one also has 1, 2, 3, 4. This has 4 and this has 4 when we stack them. So we may want to switch this up a little bit and have instead having some payload compactors here. But that entirely depends on the stats of the turret, how large the gauge will be and how fast it will fire. So before we decide that, it's time to test how efficient we are. So get your prefab tool and you should be able to stack this in a nice stack like this. And I don't know how high turret will be, maybe like this. And we should now check that the connections are good. So go through your turret here and check and see if it looks alright or if it looks like something is off. Then you might want to redo it and paste it down again. Mine looks absolutely fine, so what I will do now is connect up some connectors like this and connect the 4 vertical rods in order to put a firing piece. And when we do that, each and every part of this CRAM cannon should light up blue as if it's connected, and if it doesn't, you did something wrong there. And here you go. Now we can see what type of stats we have. Just like this, we have a reload time of 17 seconds, a diameter of, 1700, a material per firepower of 705. So if we compare this, we basically take the dense hardener pellet layer and we just spammed it, and then we added or replaced enough of them with payload compactors so that we have the same capacity. Basically the shot is the equal size. This reloads at 17 seconds, this reloads at 38 seconds. And this has a material per firepower of 1055. And this one again had a material per firepower per 705. So this 3D layer cannon is much more efficient, but if we want to get those really super efficient values of like in the 300s, which I think is as low as you can go basically, then we need to make some larger designs. But when learning, it's better to begin with the smaller designs, just so you learn and get the hang of the 3D Tetris. Because if we're gonna be realistic, it's not all of the time we can use like T17 wide turrets. The army of Gmodism, at least, we often go with a T7 and T5s and even T3s. Bonus tip, the lowest layer when you actually make a turret, do like this. Spawn it like this, so you have the top layer at the bottom. You don't want the pellets right in the bottom. And if you do that, the material per firepower will be lower, so that's real nice. And that's how to make 3D CRAM Tetris. I do hope that this tutorial was useful for you, and if it was useful, well, please leave a like and do subscribe for future videos. Do check out the previous video in the instant tutorials that was about advanced CRAM cannon building tips. In there, we go through equally important building tips for making really efficient CRAM cannons that always hit the mark, almost. In any case, this is Gmodism, and we're signing out.